everybody. Welcome to episode 20 of All About African Violets. All About African Violets is musically sponsored by Ted Yoder. You can hear and purchase his wonderful music on his website at tedyoder.com, or you can also get it and download it from iTunes. Well, welcome to my sunroom, you guys. I'm happy to see you. Hope you've all had a great week. It's been very busy here. I think I say that every week, don't I? And I'm in my green shirt again. I realized that when I sat down, but I wanted to get this ready for you. And so rather than go and change my clothes, I sat down here in the sunroom so that I could keep moving forward with the podcast. Well, I wanted to just kind of recap a little bit about last week. I think it's really scary to hear the info about INSV, but I also think it's really important. And in case you wanted to see these again, this is the book, The Compendium of Flowering Potted Plant Diseases, the booklet that Joyce had, and I picked up a copy used on eBay, and it already arrived, came very quickly. And the other book that I mentioned in the notes, which I forgot to mention on the podcast, is Charles Cole's book, Insect and Mite Pests of African Violets, and this was revised in 2002, and this is an AVSA publication. It is available on the AVSA website. So, well, we're going to move right into tips and treasures today because we are going to talk about planting by the phases of the moon. I've mentioned this before, and it came up in the comments on the website in the last week or so, and I thought this would be a good time to do that. And the way it's set up, when I became interested in this because it appears in the African Violet magazine, and I never knew what it was. And I thought it meant I was supposed to plant during my birth sign, which is Taurus, but that didn't seem to be a good time to plant based on what I was reading, and it's very confusing. So I did some research, and I did a very short program on it when I was still at Ventura, and then I was asked to speak about it at National a few years ago, so I expanded my presentation, and what I've done is taken the slides from that presentation, and you'll be seeing the presentation almost as if I were delivering it at National. You'll hear me, I did a voiceover over the slides, so you'll see the slides and you'll hear me explaining them, and we'll go through that. It takes about 20 minutes, I think, 15-20 minutes to get through it. So I don't want to talk too long because I don't want the podcast to be too long. So let me get cracking here. First though, before I've been meaning to share this, and it's kind of, I suppose this is kind of dorky on my part. But this magazine, Chicagoland Gardening, this is the winter edition, and it's the November-December 2012 edition. And I had forgotten all about this, but a woman had emailed me, take that out so you can see this better. A woman had emailed me earlier in the year and asked me some questions about African violets, and she said she was a reporter for this magazine, and I answered her questions, and I didn't really think anything more about it until one of the folks from Illinois sent me an email and said, "Hey, I saw your blurb in Chicagoland Gardening." So I had to run right out and buy one, and it just tickles me to be listed as a local expert about African violets, and so my name is there. You probably can't see it, but it's right there. And it says that I'm the editor of the Illinois African Violet Society newsletter. So, because they wanted to know about top picks for, it says top picks for flowering plants from local experts. And these are things to grow in the winter, that will still be beautiful and give you some joy in your plant room. So I know it's dorky, but I was kind of excited about it, so I wanted to share it. Well, Virginia asked this, and a few others have asked this too, about why some plants are grown under domes. And I think this stems from what you saw, the footage that you saw at Missouri Valley. Well, violets are not grown under domes, but some of the other gesneriids can be grown under domes, and they can be shown that way. Certain plants just need a more controlled atmosphere. Certain plants need a warmer atmosphere, and a dome will provide that. So Lori in Maine asked if I have a top 10 list. And would I say that my favorites or best growers have remained the same over the years? And were there some of the first ones that I sought out once I started over? And I said, my answer to those three questions are yes, yes, and yes. I do have sort of a top 10. It changes from time to time, but there are about 6, I would say, that are almost always on it. And those include Kent Stork's Smooch Me, a plant called Ode to Beauty, Kent Stork's Pow Wow, another older plant called Sapphire Halo, Rob's Antique Rose, and of course, Fisherman's Paradise. And, those 6, I would say, are nearly always in my top 10. And you'll notice that they're almost all standards, and many of them are variegated. That seems to be what I lean toward. And every year, Floyd Lawson publishes a list. He solicits information from everyone. He asks everyone in the magazine, through the magazine, to send in their top 25 plants. And then from that, he compiles a list of the favorite plants from all readers of the magazine. It's very interesting. And it appears once a year in the magazine. And many of these plants are plants that I grew when I was a beginning grower, and they grew well for me, and so I do return to them. In particular, Ode to Beauty. I don't have it right now, but I did just pick up another Smooch Me, which I had lost, and I do have Fisherman's Paradise back in my collection, and I have Leaves Down of Pow Wow. So, and of course, Rob's Antique Rose. I think the only one I don't have right now is probably Ode to Beauty of those 6. So Cindy left a comment on the website, and she said, thanks to all the information I've gotten from your podcasts and the Ravelry group. Cindy's a knitter. She said, I had the nerve to divide a multi-sucker plant that I bought from a local nursery. There were at least 5. I didn't know what I was buying at the time. It just looked healthy with all those leaves. I kept hearing you say, limit your collection. So I only kept 2 in case one does better than the other. Thanks for all your tips about soil, fertilizer, and lighting. My plants are looking mighty fine these days. And I just wanted to share that because isn't that great that her plants are doing so well? I'm really excited for you, Cindy, that's going on. And I am very happy that you are learning more by watching the podcast. So that's really great. So thank you. Well, and really well done, Lori in Maine and Steve both asked about moon signs. And like I said before, I've been wanting to talk to you about them for some time. So I'm going to start the presentation now, and I'll see you on the other side. Hi, you guys. Here we are. I'm going to talk a little bit about planting by the phases of the moon. The slides that you're going to see are from a presentation that I did for National a few years ago. So I gave an overview of planting by the phases of the moon, what it is, how it works, the moon and its phases, moon signs and zodiac signs, and some resources I'll give you, and also I will show you some experiments, an experiment that I did. So, planting by the phases of the moon. What is it? Well, it's a way to work with your plants. It takes into consideration the phases of the moon and how they affect plant growth. And the quote that's on this slide is from a website called gardeningbythemoon.com, and I got a lot of great information there. This quote is, planting by the moon is an idea as old as agriculture, based both in folklore and superstition. But there are scientific ideas to back it up. So who plants by the phases of the moon? Well, Pliny the Elder, back in a really long time ago, Benjamin Franklin, sailors, farmers, fishermen, many vegetable gardeners, and me when I can. Who writes about it? Well, there have been articles in the National Geographic, the London daily newspaper The Times, Marion Owen, who is the co-author of Chicken Soup for the Gardener's Soul, and R.J. Harris, who is or was the head gardener at Tresillian Estate in Cornwall in England. How does it work? Well, you see the sun is there in the middle of that little drawing, and the earth travels around the sun
and the moon travels around the earth. So while it's like a circle within a circle. They're both going at the same time. The moon, the phase of the moon, controls the amount of water in the soil. So remember Sir Isaac Newton? Well, the tides are governed by the gravitational pull of the moon, which is stronger than the sun's pull because the moon is closer to the earth, about 400 times closer. So how do the tides work? This is from Astrological Gardening by Louise Riotti. The gravitation of the passing moon pulls the nearest body of water a little away from the solid mass of earth beneath it. Sorry, guys. From the solid mass of earth beneath it, and at the same time pulls the earth a little away from the water on the farthest side. In this manner, the moon sets up two tidal bulges on opposite sides of the earth. So the moon governs bodies of water, the ocean tides, and we've just seen a very dramatic and devastating example of this when Hurricane Sandy came through the eastern seaboard here in the United States at the same time as high tide at the full moon, and it was just devastating. Lakes, yes, some lakes, even Lake Michigan, the Great Lakes here in where I live in Chicagoland, Lake Michigan has tides. They're not large like they are with the oceans, but even small bodies of water are affected by the moon's gravitational pull. And actually, the very first time I did this presentation, I was still at Ventura, and I happened to find this comic. So even small bodies of water are governed by the tides of the moon's gravitational pull. And I thought it was so hilarious. This old Beetle Bailey cartoon. Paper says high tide is at 4:15, and Cookie says, "So what does that have to do with me?" And Sarge says, "It's snack time." And Otto the dog says, well, thinks his stomach is affected by the moon's gravitational pull. So anyway, so how does it look? Well, this is not to scale, but over on the right you can see the sun, and you can see the arrows are pointing to the way the moon orbits around the sun, and you can see the sun hits it at different times during its orbit. So you'll see the inner circle of the moons is the view from Earth based on where the sun is and how it reflects. So you can see over at 3 o'clock, you'll see the new moon, and then you'll see it goes counterclockwise. So at right around between 1 and 2, you'll see the waxing crescent, and then at the top at 12 o'clock you'll see the half moon, and it goes on this way all the way around. Let me change the slide. There we go. Here's a closer look. So the new moon is when it's dark. We don't see the moon really. The lunar gravity, though, pulls water up, increasing moonlight, and encourages balanced root and leaf growth. And the next phase of the moon is the waxing crescent. And then the first quarter, again waxing, that means it's getting larger. The gravitational pull lessens, but moonlight is stronger, which encourages strong leaf growth. And then waxing gibbous, and then the full moon. And once we get to the full moon, everything starts waning. Energy begins to wane, but the gravitational pull stays high, and it encourages more water in the soil. Moonlight begins to decrease, which encourages active root growth. We get to waning gibbous, and then we get to the last quarter, waning. Decreased gravitational pull, decreased moonlight, everything is slowing down. This is a resting period. And then we get to the waning crescent, and then it starts over again at the new moon. So now that gives you an idea of how the phases of the moon look and how they move through, it takes about a month to happen. Occasionally we get two full moons and that in a month, and that's called a blue moon. But the signs of the zodiac correspond to the elements of earth, fire, air, and water. And the moon moves through each of the 12 signs of the zodiac. And when I say the signs of the zodiac, these are the constellations in the sky. Okay, we're more familiar with them when we read our horoscope in the newspaper, but they were originally, they're constellations in the sky, and the moon moves through each of the 12 signs of the zodiac every few days throughout the month, and it takes about 29 days for the moon to travel through the entire zodiac. So each plant, this is from Gardening by the Moon by Karen Catterall. That's the website I mentioned to you earlier. Each plant has a preference for what elemental sign it is planted in. The best time for starting seeds of most annual plants is during the fertile water signs, but root crops like earth signs and flowers, especially like the air sign of Libra. Now, if you get the African Violet magazine, if you're a member of the AVSA and you get the magazine, you will find in each edition there is a section, a page on the moon signs and planting by the phases of the moon. So these are the 12 signs of the zodiac, and these are the characteristics that they have. The fire signs are Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, and these are all barren and dry, Leo being the most barren and dry. The earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn. Taurus and Capricorn are what's called semi-fruitful, and Taurus is moist, Capricorn is dry. Virgo is barren and moist. This sounds a little confusing, but it's going to make sense the more we go along. The air signs are Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. Gemini and Aquarius are both barren and dry, but Libra is semi-fruitful and moist. And then we come to the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, all of which are very fruitful and moist. So here is a closer look. Cancer is the most productive sign. And the phone just rang. Hang on, you guys. I'm so sorry. Hold on. Hi, you guys. I'm back. I'm so sorry about that. That's twice now, I think. In 20 episodes, as the phone has only rung twice. Anyway, this is a closer look at the most fruitful signs. And Steve left a message on a comment on the website that he kind of thinks that the moon signs are like snake oil. But, plenty of people do plant this way. Farmers have been planting this way for decades and longer. And people have been, Benjamin Franklin did this, Pliny the Elder did it. People and fishermen everybody uses these signs to some extent. Sometimes I think it's just intuitively that we use them. I know from my own experience that when I put leaves down, or when I'm repotting, or when I'm separating and potting babies on, if I do this in a fruitful sign, when the moon is in a fruitful sign, I rarely lose anything. Now, we don't always have that window of opportunity, and Steve mentioned that as well in his comment on the website. A lot of us have very busy lives, and sometimes I have a window of opportunity and it's a barren day. Well, what do? Well, I put the leaf down, and then you'll laugh, but the next fruitful day, I will go by and give all the cups where I put the leaves down. I'll give them a little squeeze, kind of shake them up a little, tap them gently, and it kind of shakes them up, and they think that they've been repotted on a fruitful day. I know it sounds wacky, but as in many other things, my late mother used to swear by the bar of soap under the sheet at the bottom of the bed that as long as she had that under there, she didn't have foot cramps. So sometimes they call these things old wives' tales, but there's certainly, I think, a grain of truth in them. And from my own experience, I find it to be very beneficial to plant when it is very fruitful and moist. So let's talk about some resources. One of the great resources that I found when I started this research initially is gardeningbythemoon.com. Karen has great stuff on her site, and you can purchase an annual calendar there. It's $14.95. They're focused for specific growing areas, and I believe that those would be growing areas in the U.S., but I'm not sure, and you can send her an email and ask her if you have questions about that. She also offers it as a PDF download where you can purchase a month at a time, or you can for $2 a month, or purchase the whole year for $12 a year. Now, she also has some software, the Moon Planting Matrix. I am not familiar with this. I've never seen it, but it's about $50. It's customizable to your local area, and it includes a year of moon data, and then after that, you pay an annual fee of $10 for a year as you go forward. And she does have it available as a free trial first, so you can check it out and see if you like it before you actually pony up the money to get it. Now, some books. The Farmer's Almanac, I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. And the Moon Signs, the Llewellyn Moon Signs book, which is what I use, and which is where the AVSA licenses the information that they put in the magazine. It comes from the Llewellyn book. R.J. Harris wrote a book about moon gardening, and he, as I mentioned earlier, was a gardener on an estate in Cornwall in England. He may still be. He may still be around. I'm not sure. His book, however, is out of print. You can find it used on. I found it used on Amazon, but don't pay too much. Okay. Also, if you are a member of the AVSA, this is another great reason to join. You always get the African Violet magazine as one of your benefits of membership, and every issue has 2 months worth of moon sign info from the Llewellyn book. Now, this is a great experiment. It started with myself and my friend Carolee Carter, who is a past chair of the National Membership and Promotions Committee for the AVSA. We were going to do this experiment because she didn't think that it would work. She thinks it's snake oil. She may still, I'm not sure. We haven't talked about it lately. But she wasn't able to carry through for the whole period of time. And this was a lengthy period of time, though, when I did this. It was in 2006 and 2007. And it was 2 plants, 4 leaves, a fruitful day, and a barren day. I chose 2 solid green standards. I did not go with a variegated plant. Both plants had grown well for me at various times. Both were in healthy condition. At that time, I was using Volkmann Brothers Soilless Mix, and I did cut it appreciably with both perlite and vermiculite, and that is visible in the photos. The exact measurements are not available because, as you guys already know, my friend Joyce Stork is the scientist. I'm the person who kind of looks at it and goes, yeah, that looks good. The plants are doing well. We'll go with that. The water is the tap water from my home. I run it through a Brita pitcher here. I use pH down because the water here is got a very high pH. The fertilizer that I use is Optimara, and I use it at 1/8 to 1/4 of a teaspoon a gallon, and I call that fertilizer water. I also used Allegro Plant Tonic when the plants were little, and I don't know if Allegro is still available, but boy, it was great when it was. It used to smell really bad, but it worked really well, and that was a tablespoon per gallon, and again, mixed with tap water. And I used those 2 mixes of water throughout the experiment. So on the left there on the top is Benediction, that's a Kent Stork plant, and on the bottom is Rhapsody Patricia, that is an Optimara. And on a fruitful day, I took a leaf of each plant. It was June 26th, 2006. The moon was in Cancer. And then the next day was a barren day, the most barren day, Leo. The moon was in Leo, June 27th, 2006. So the leaves that have the 1 on them were fruitful, and the 2s were planted on a barren day. So 7 weeks later, much to my surprise, Rhapsody Patricia 2, which was planted on a barren day, was the first one to sprout. And then 8 weeks later, almost everyone had already caught up and surpassed Rhapsody Patricia 2. Both of the number 1 plants, the Benediction and Rhapsody Patricia number 1, have caught up, but Benediction number 2, which is down on the bottom right, nothing. Then 12 weeks out, finally, Benediction number 2 had sprouted. That's still on the bottom. And Rhapsody Patricia 2 up on the top left. It has more leaves, but both of the number 1 plants have larger leaves. This is a group shot on October 18th. And then this is the group shot on the left, and over on the right is week 26. So I went from week 16 to week 26, and you can definitely see the difference. Everything is larger and a much deeper green, and all the plants are in the same position as they were on the photo on the left. So Rhapsody Patricia, which is up at the top, still looks to have the most plantlets. Rhapsody Patricia number 1, that was Rhapsody Patricia number 2 up at the top. Rhapsody Patricia number 1 still has the largest, and that's over on the left of the photo on the right. Benediction number 1 has substantial growth and one really good looking plantlet, and then over on the far right of the photo on the right, Benediction 2 is now finally showing some substantial growth. So I jump on again to January 13th, time to make the donuts. That's from an old commercial in the U.S. about donuts. The fruitful plants are on the left side of the photo. They are both larger, and the barren plants have more, but they are all smaller. So on January 13th, it was a fruitful day. The moon was in Scorpio, and Rhapsody Patricia number 1 is across the top, and Benediction number 1 is at the bottom. So you can see that 2 really good-sized plantlets from each of these leaves, and then a few others, not so big. The next day, a barren day, the moon was in Sagittarius. Rhapsody Patricia up at the top, lots of plantlets, but much smaller, and same thing on the bottom for Benediction 2. Benediction 2 is still the smallest of them. So I potted all of these things. I potted quite a few of them up, and this is taking us to week 26. And if you look to the left of the red line, as I say here on my slide, I think it's clear that those are the fruitful day plants, and that they are much stronger and larger than the barren day plants. Even though there are more of the barren day plants, they are all much smaller. Then this is week 35. It was St. Patrick's Day, and in the center over there on the right with the lavender, that's Benediction. It was blooming like mad. I don't know what the plant is behind it, guys, so I know someone's going to ask me, what is that behind it? But that was, like 6 years ago now, and I don't remember what it was. So you can see that things were starting to even out a little bit. The ones planted on the barren days and worked with on the barren days are catching up a little bit, but over on the left of the red line, you can see that there are 4 substantially larger plants still from the ones that were done on the fruitful days. So on the week 36, this was March 20th, I picked one of each plant to grow. On the left of the red line are the fruitful ones, and on the right are the ones that were done on the barren days. And that's my homemade reservoir that you've already seen. It's been around for a while. I use it quite regularly, particularly when I travel. Although you notice I got the wick is hanging out at the very bottom corner there on the right. So one can only hope that I found that and put it back in before I left on my holiday. So when I came back from my vacation on April 7th, Benediction was blooming. And this is week 40, April 20th, it's still blooming. And Rhapsody Patricia on the left, which is above it, it has buds. And on the right, at the top, so does Rhapsody Patricia number 2. But Benediction number 2, still nothing. It was just sort of hanging there and still the smallest, not much going on with it. May 22nd, this is week 45. Benediction 1 is still blooming. It's been blooming since at least the 7th of April. Above it, Rhapsody Patricia is finally blooming. And finally, Benediction number 2 down on the bottom right makes a strong comeback. And the first plant to sprout, Rhapsody Patricia number 2 up on the top right, was scrawny. It had buds, but it was not blooming. Both the fruitful plants show stronger, larger growth, and both were sooner to bloom than the two barren plants. So, in my experience, as I mentioned, I rarely, if ever, lose a leaf that I put down on a fruitful day. So, I'll be right back.
So what do you think? It's kind of a different concept, but I have found it to be a really good concept. It works for me very well. And again, I know it sounds wacky, but on the days when I have had to pot things on a barren day, I figure out usually when the next fruitful day is, and then I'll go and, give them a little tap, tap the pots on the bottom and give them a squeeze, and just so that they feel like maybe they've been repotted, but they haven't been. I know that sounds wacky, but it seems to work. So here is the Wellens Moon Sign book. This is the 2013 edition. I'm sure that you can get this at your local bookstore, and failing that, at Amazon. And I just find it to be a very, very great thing to have. And this is R.J. Harris's book, Moon Gardening, that I also mentioned. And again, I believe this one is out of print. I found it used on Amazon. So and there are plenty of other books out there about this topic. And so if you have an interest in it, can't hurt to try on a couple things, see how it goes for you. Well, train, big train. Fast train, going quickly. All right, it's time to take a look at what's on the stands. Hi everybody, I'm here in my guest room. You can see me in the mirror back there. I've disbudded everything except for Little Creek Girl, because I'm waiting to see the blossoms on that. And everything here from the Box of Joy, looking pretty fabulous. Things are going well in there. And then a quick look down here. That's Western Moon, Blueberry Sprite, and there's Pink Pussycat. Hi you guys, I'm in the basement, and these are the Smithiantha plants. I'm trying to move them to get a better look. Joyce was going to take a couple of these home, and we both forgot about that. And the new growth, it's not really that wonderful cinnamon color, so I'm a little concerned that maybe it's not the true species. But I don't know if you can see. You see that on that one? It looks like a seed pod, like blossoms, like it's going to bloom. So I guess we'll see what it does. Cross your fingers. Well, this tray is really full, and actually it looks like it needs a drink of water. Everybody in here is looking pretty good. I would like to get a chance to do some potting, splitting these babies off, but that may not happen until early December. The next couple of weeks are a very busy time for me. But they'll be happy, still hanging out here. Here's the smaller one. Things are coming up in here. There's Champagne Pink, looking great. Down here are the trailers, and I have disbudded these trailers. They were looking wonderful. I'm letting little Pixie Blue come into bloom just to make sure. And this one that says Cherokee Trail, I'm beginning to suspect that it was mislabeled. The leaf shape is looking very much like Ramblin' Sunshine over here, and I don't think the Cherokee Trail is a crown variegated plant, but that one's getting ready to bloom, so we'll see what it looks like. And I did a little grooming up here on some of the plantlets and a little turning because they've been growing a little crookedy, but everything's looking good here. Growth is progressing. Well, it's late in the day on Saturday night, but boy, it's still sure looking great, isn't it? Needs to be turned, so I'll give it a turn. And actually, it's really filling this space really well. It's beautiful. Everything's looking really good. Things are moving forward on the stands, which is great. I did some disbudding, as you saw, on certain things. I'd like to get them, the foliage to shape up on a few things, as I'm already looking forward to the next show, which for me will likely be the Illinois show, which will be in April of 2013. And after that, National, which will be in Austin later in the year, in the spring, I should say, in 2013 as well. So get the bail money ready. You know, I got to tell you guys, I don't know what we're going to talk about bail money lately, because we are now pretty much past the busy fall season of shows, and things kind of quiet down, at least in the United States, in the Northern Hemisphere, at this time of year. You know, we're busy with holidays and all kinds of stuff in that respect. And the winter, not always a great time to be trying to show plants, but so that really takes us to, it's time to keep moving forward. I did have quite a week this week. I really was wiped out after the Illinois event. I missed a couple of days of work, and then I had another day already scheduled because the church ladies wanted me to come and talk to them about spinning. And I took my spinning wheel, and actually you can't see it, it's below camera level, but there's fiber all over the floor in the sunroom that I need to put away. And then today I drove up to Marengo, Illinois, to a place called The Fold, and I sold one of my spinning wheels. So when I began the year, I had 3 spinning wheels, and now I have 1, and it really is my wheel of choice. It was my first wheel. It has remained my go-to wheel throughout the other 2 wheels that I purchased and have since divested. And that seems to be the time of year for that, for me. Time to let some things go. So it's always a good thing, I think. Well, thank you for joining me this week. I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about planning by the phases of the moons and the moon signs and how they work. I encourage you to give it a try. What do you got to lose? I hope you have a great week to come. I want to thank you all for the comments and star ratings on iTunes. If you are watching the podcast on iTunes, if you can leave a rating or a review, that would be great. It's so helpful. It helps move the podcast up in the lineup, so if someone's looking for it, it will come up sooner rather than later. And I hope that you have a great week. Again, I think I just said that, but I do hope you do have a great week. I hope that your days are filled with all the things you love. Good growing. I'll see you next time.